the weekend again, so back in the shed. I managed to rebush the top clutch shaft. So I now have a bronze bush in here, and that has totally taken out all of the wear that was in there, which is really good. In order to do that, because the hole was oval, it was a little bit tricky. So I ended up buying some adjustable reamers, which somebody else actually suggested in the comments, which was good. By the time you'd suggested that, I'd already had that thought and ordered some. So obviously I was on the right track there, which is good to know. And in order to get the hole round on this end again, because it was completely oval, I machined up a piece of steel that would slide into that hole there with a point on it that I could use to run the reamer on. And that worked pretty well. I say pretty well, that's the first time I've actually used those tapered reamers, and I had to use two different sizes to actually get the hole big enough to get the bush, the bronze bush in there. And I found even with that guide, it was still a little bit off. So when I pushed the shaft through, it didn't quite line up. So I had to make the hole very slightly oversized, just enough to give some wiggle in the bush. And then I was able to fit everything in place and use that 638 Loctite to lock it into place. And that's worked really well. I was then going to actually use this side to make a sort of mandrel so I could rebush the other side. But what I discovered is once I'd done the first side and the Loctite had set, this is fine. There's no wear there. I think the hole is still slightly oversized, but everything seems straight and there's no play in it. So given that seems okay, I've decided to stop here rather than risk messing this up, because it wasn't easy to do this. It took me about 2.5 hours, I think, to open the hole up, just doing a little bit at a time and measuring it carefully, just trying to get it right. So I think I probably reached my engineering limits on this. I don't want to risk it on that, not when it's actually working fine now. So the play is all out of it. I'm still messing around with the arms and things, and I do have a die now, so I can make up a rod to go in here, but without the play in there, this is all a little bit tight at the moment. I've got just the way it's adjusted. It's not falling back, but I could just push it. That's working a lot better. It's still not as good as the proper Brooklands way, which is the shafts all out on this side, but I don't have those parts and I can't make them. So this will do for now, and I can go to that other method later if I can ever find the correct parts. So this is good. This is coming along. I still think I need a stop to stop the pedal coming too far forwards, which I think then pushes this back. This would then rub, I think, against the plate in here. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen until I can actually spin the engine over and see what's going on. But I did think if I do need a stop on this, you don't need one for pushing on it because it hits its limit inside the gearbox. But I may need one here, but I could always make something that bolts onto here possibly with a little screw to adjust it, and have a stop on this which stops that going too far back. I think that would work quite well, and it's all out of the way there. Somebody else has kindly sent me photos of an original Brooklands, which it's hard to get those. There's lots of replicas around, but not very many original ones, and not a lot of clear photos on some of the details. So these photos are an amazing help. One of the things I realized from those is the floors are actually a lot thicker than I thought. I was worried about my bar here, but the floors are actually quite thick wood, which is what you'd expect because you're resting your heels on them. So that'll be fine. The floor will actually come up pretty much level to that, I think. Possibly even a bit higher. It's hard to know exactly. So that's all coming along. To get the engine back in, so to do this, I actually separated off the engine and gearbox. I needed to do that to get the split pin out anyway. And then when I put everything back together, I decided it was going to be easier to... I basically pulled the engine completely out of the car and put it down over there and then set the gearbox onto it. I don't know if it's going to focus again. There we go. And it's much easier to put the gearbox onto the engine when it's on the ground. And then I found it way simpler to then get the gearbox to mount up to the prop shaft here. Because you've got a universal joint on there, the thing is you can move it. So all you actually have to do is get it close enough and you can manhandle the U-joint to get it to slide onto the prop shaft, and then once it's engaged on that spline, it's easy. You just drop it down. So that's definitely the way forward with this, I think, in the future. If you have to take the engine out, you take out the engine and gearbox. So that's all good now. I adjusted the position of my starter motor into the right place in the bell housing once I actually realized there's a machined face on that fits into the bell housing nicely. So you can see here it all sits flush, which is how it should be, I think. Haven't done anything else on the carbs. I did finish my little handle. So I'm not going to call this a starter handle because it isn't. And as somebody pointed out, if you tried to use this to start the car, it would probably be lethal because it doesn't have the little kick-out ramps that you need on here, so that when this engages, you're turning the motor around, and then once the engine fires, it's going to start spinning faster. And what you want to do is kick this out. Otherwise, it's going to spin with the engine, and obviously that spinning in front of the engine isn't going to be a good thing. I also fitted that little plastic bush, so that fits in there just to stop it rattling around. So this isn't a starting handle. I may still make a starting handle, and I'm hoping that somebody can send me the correct dimensions for one of those. I made this fairly big. I basically made it as big as I thought I could get away with, so I've got the most amount of leverage on it. And the only reason I made this is so that I can turn the engine over by hand, so I can set the timing on the magneto when that arrives, and also to turn it over to be able to set the valve lash. So, as I say, this isn't a starting handle, but it does actually work fine for turning the engine over. There's quite a bit of stiction on it at the moment. Plus all the compression, of course. So I'm pretty sure starting one of these by hand would actually be quite hard work. Obviously, I've got the electric starter on it, and today I went and bought a battery for it. So just a standard cheap little battery. Well, relatively cheap. They're not that cheap these days. Battery sizes are interesting. So I believe in the UK they have different sizing for them, or they call them different things. And I think one of the standard Riley batteries was an 038 size. It doesn't work the same way here in New Zealand. So we have sizes like this, NS, 40, ZS, MF. I think the 40 is the main thing. So this is 330 cranking amps. I guess that's 63 amp hours. I'm not sure. That seems a lot, but that'll do for. Still not focusing. That'll do for me to be able to get the engine running, and just see if it's actually going to work. And in the actual car, the battery lives down in here. So I need to make a tray in there. I can fit a slightly bigger battery. I've actually been looking at getting a much more modern, they're called Odyssey batteries. They're used a lot in race cars. They're an AGM battery, so they're very robust. They're quite small. They're about half the size of that other battery. And they're rated at, I think it's 170 CCA, but they actually perform better than that, apparently. And they are very popular in race cars and things like that. So I can get one. They're quite expensive. I think they're at least 500 New Zealand dollars. But saying that, I think this was about 180. But that's okay. If I don't end up using this in the car permanently, I've got other uses for it. So that was well worth getting anyway. What else? I ordered various bits and pieces from the UK. So we have, let's see, just put that out of the way. We have, I got this today. This is just oil gauge pipe, which I'll need at some point. This is ignition lead. So this is solid copper ignition lead, which is what you need to use with a magneto-driven car. So there should be enough there, hopefully, to get to the 4 spark plugs. I don't actually have to go very far. Obviously, the magneto will sit here, and the distributor cap is right sort of here. So I only need a couple of meters or less of spark wire, and that should all fit nicely inside my tube there. The magneto has screw terminals on it, apparently. So one end will have screw terminals, the other end will have these soldered brass spark plug connectors. So that all kind of just fits nicely in there. This is all sized to fit, so that's a good, nice tight fit in there. I should be able to tin it and then solder it inside there, I think. It should work well. I got little brass spark plug tops. Those are sort of period piece. That's for the Land Rover. Don't want to worry about those. I got a decent battery disconnect switch. So I have these in all of my cars. The qualities of these things varies a lot. So these parts I got from the Green Spark Plug company in the UK, and they use these Durite parts, which I'd never really heard of before, but they look pretty good quality. So I thought, okay, I'll get one of those, because a lot of the battery cutouts you see now are, they're pretty cheap and nasty, to be honest. Very plasticky. They don't look right in a vintage car. So I went for one of these, which is a Durite. That's the number on it. 060565. So this is a nice metal heavy duty battery cutout. The key is removable. So that comes out. And get it back in. So this has an extremely satisfying clunk. It's quite stiff. Here we go. So this should be really nice to use, I think. The quality seems way better than the stuff you get normally. And it's very hard with one hand. I don't think I can do it again, but yeah, just the feel of the switch is so nice. It's just very, very solid. Goes over with a good thunk. It just feels nice. And the other thing I got was a brake light switch, which I will need at some point. This is very similar to the one on the Austin 7. Again, this is a Durite, and the way this works is it just bolts to the body somewhere, and you just kind of pull on this. So that needs to hook onto something. So that'll probably hook on down under here somewhere, and there'll be a bracket to actuate that switch. So that was another little thing I'm going to need. I think I mentioned before I have ordered a period-ish choke cable and choke knob. And I got one of those. It's just a standard Lucas push button, thinking I may use that as the kill switch on the Magneto. But I also have on the way, from the States actually, from DigiKey, I ordered some parts, including a nice, it's brass but chrome plated marine pull switch, which looks suitably period. I think if I took the chrome off it and nickel plated it, it would look even better. I think the knob just unscrews, but that's actually a 2-position switch, and I'm wondering if that might be better for the kill switch. So instead of just pushing a button to stop the engine, you actually have to pull it out so that you can start the engine, and then to stop the engine you push it back in. That may be better. I don't actually understand or know how the original ones work, so that'll do for now. And I think that was everything for now. So we're definitely coming along. Maybe during the week I'll see if I can pop out and get some steel. I did ask at the engineering place where I get my gas refills from. They're a gas supplier, but they're also just a general engineering shop, more heavy engineering stuff. And I did ask the guy if they'd be okay with me going through their scrap bin for various little bits and pieces of metal, and he said, yeah, that should be fine. Just unfortunately, when I arrived there, they had literally just emptied the bin, so there wasn't anything in it. So I'll go up again and see what sort of things they've got, and hopefully then I can get things like some probably 8mm plate, and I'll make the actual foot pads for the pedals, and I'll probably, I think I mentioned before, I'll just shape them the same as the proper ones, the saloon car ones, because I'm pretty sure they would have been the same. From pictures of actual Brooklyns I've seen, they all look pretty much the same, usually with different varying amounts of holes drilled in them, which is, I think if you've got a race car, that's one of the things you do, you drill holes in them for some reason. So it's good, we're making progress again. Sunday afternoon, and I was actually going to be trying to take it a bit easier today because I got quite sore after wrestling the engine into place yesterday, but I've ended up almost finishing off the clutch mechanism. So I discovered I had some 8mm stainless steel rod, so I've made up the linkage I need to go in there. It may still need a little bit of tweaking, a few little bends and things, but to get the shape right, I used one of these contour gauges up against the gearbox to give me the curve, and then bent it to fit that. I only just got this last week after seeing Arco mentioning it on his channel, and I've known about them before, but never actually bothered to get one. And then he mentioned them and mentioned how reasonably priced they are. They're pretty cheap. I think this was like $10 or something. So I thought, oh, I'll just order one. And yeah, it's really, really handy. The other reason I wanted to get one is for when I make the radiator shell, to get the curves the same on both sides. But using that, I was able to get the right shape for the linkage, and with the new die that I had, I was able to thread the ends of that, and that's quite nicely tucked away out of the way there. The linkage itself, with the new battery, I was actually able to connect up the starter motor and actually spin this over and see where the clutch does actually engage. And it doesn't need as much movement as I thought. The other thing I discovered is this release bearing cup can't go too far backwards because this lever, the shaft can't go too far backwards because the arm in there, which you can't really see, because you've got that guide pin in the top, and this arm, so if you've got the guide pin going that way, you've got the arm that goes over the top of it. So it's limited by that guide pin. It'll hit the pin. So this can't go all the way back and actually rub on the spinning bits of the clutch, which is good. So what I've done is set up a stop on the pedal to stop it coming too far forwards. So this is just a little piece of angle iron. I tapped it for a 1/4 inch BSF bolt, and there's a bolt and a lock nut there. And I can adjust the off point. I still need to tweak the bends on this linkage, or else rotate it around, just to get it so these all move nice and freely. It's pretty close at the moment. I think actually a drop of oil in there will make all of that free up really well. But the way I've got it set up is so that you can hear it in there. In the rest position, there's just a little bit of movement on that clutch release cup bearing holder thing. And the reason for that is it's a ball bearing thrust bearing inside there. And when you don't have the clutch in, you don't want that bearing to be running. You want a little bit of clearance there so it doesn't spin. Otherwise, you'll just wear it out really quickly. So I've got, well, I don't know how much, but you can hear there's clearance in there, which should be enough to stop that bearing spinning all the time. It's actually a bit hard to tell when you're turning the engine over. You can't hear it because of all the other noises. So I'm pretty sure there's enough clearance there now. That all kind of has to be oiled periodically as well, and the manuals are a little bit vague on that. They just kind of say take the cover off and periodically oil it. Obviously you don't want too much oil in there because it'll go onto your clutch. So, oops, focus is in the right place. So that's my little adjustable stop. These bolts are already here because this is some sort of shaft for the release fork inside the gearbox there. So that's already there. That all keeps it nice and low profile. This is all out of the way. The floor will come up to here somewhere. So this is all tucked away out of the way, and there is enough room there for the pedal and my foot. So this is just a temporary pedal I made, just a block of wood with a 1/2 inch hole drilled in it that I've jammed onto the end of the metal, just to get some idea of how this actually all fits together and where the pedals will sit. The actual pedal faces are slightly curved if you look at them from the side, so to make it more comfortable for your foot on there. And I've just got a very temporary return spring hooked up. It's just a small spring. I need a slightly bigger spring because I can't actually fit the ends here over the bolt on the bottom of the pedal. And at this end, again, I've just got a piece of wire. I'll make a little plate or something that goes on there. I may need something else there as well for possibly mounting the brake light switch and things like that. So I haven't made that up yet. That'll be something I'll do later. But you can see how that spring doesn't have to be that strong. It just needs to be enough to pull the clutch back to its rest position. And I think one of the reasons you need that there is just to stop it rattling and bouncing around. But if I carefully actually sit in the car, and if I'm not wearing my steel cap boots, whoops, you can see there is actually enough room there, and I can reasonably comfortably operate the clutch pedal. I did always wonder why the clutch pedal was so much shorter than the brake, and of course it's right underneath the steering column, so that's probably why. Brake pedals there. At the moment I don't have the brake cables hooked up, so the pedal's not really doing what it should, where it needs to rest and where it returns to. And then the throttle pedal will be room under there, I guess. So that's all coming along really well. Next thing, I guess, is wait for the magneto to arrive, and it should be possible then to actually start it up. I forgot to mention one thing about this clutch setup as well. As well as the adjustment for the stop here, there's adjustment on the bottom of this threaded rod, so I can effectively shorten it, so that can change the rest position of the pedal, so I can line the pedals up. I made another wooden brake pedal just to see how that's going to work. Again, I won't actually know exactly how much travel I need until I've got everything hooked up. The other thing is the throttle pedal, which sort of sits up in here somewhere. It looks like you've got no room because of the chassis rail, but of course the body comes to here, the outside, so you've actually got a little bit of space there to play with. So the throttle pedal, this is the wrong shape, but the pedal itself will be in there somehow, and the linkage transfers down across to this.